Welcome to our Energy Connect studio at EGYPS 2023. I'm delighted to have sitting next to me Nooshin Behroyan, Chief Executive Officer at PAXON Energy. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you had a good show on the last day of EGYPS.
It's been static. It's been fantastic meeting with so many companies and just within the region, talking about their commitment to renewables, emissions recovery, and it's a very exciting time to be here.
Great. Now, the world is still facing an energy crisis. What can be done to avoid this in the future? And maybe what technologies are you working on?
So PAXON as a consulting firm, we've been focused on bringing in the technologies to get the infrastructure that's been laid in the ground since 100 years ago to get it ready for the next 150 years, right? So one of the technologies that we've been discussing heavily here is our methane emission recovery equipment. And if we have the ability today to operate more efficient, right, why would we not to? I feel like in this conference you have the platform to really have those conversations.
Oh, that's good to hear. And I mean, we're here in Egypt, which obviously natural gas plays a big role here. How much do you think it's going to play an even bigger role in the energy transition?
Well, as you're aware, with the geopolitical things that are going on, we are understanding the demand on natural gas and the shortage, right? And what we're learning is that we're dealing with a finite element. So we have to really focus on changing our approach in terms of how we look at natural gas. And I think as a hydrocarbon, as long as we keep it within the vessels that it's meant to stay in, that accounts for a successful operation for decades, if not centuries to come.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned that there are challenges coming up for the industry. What do you see some of them adapting to this changing energy landscape that companies and countries have to, adapt to?
I think the challenge is really meeting the energy demand with the commitments of the renewables, with the commitments of the emission reductions. So while in itself it's a challenge, I would look at it more as an opportunity to kind of see where we're taking the energy industry next. And I even want to compare it to the early 90s, the dot-com era.
Yeah.
And I feel like with the energy industry, we are in our dot-com era that all the companies are excited. They want to see the change. They want to see what's the next technology or doing a pilot project over things that have never been done before.
Yeah, and I want to bring you there. I mean, obviously a lot of companies are sort of announcing that they're a set date to hit the net zero target. But what do you see about or think about some of these meaningful measures to, achieve this ESG goal that they've all set?
So here's a term that we were in a meeting yesterday, and I really, really liked it, that they said, we'd like to change the word net zero to near zero. And why is because it's not about trading carbon for another carbon or accounting paper cups versus plastic cups. But when you talk about achieving near zero, it's achieving something much, much bigger. And I think with the current technologies that we have on hand and the things that are coming into marketplace, such as fusion energy, we have an opportunity to get to that near zero. And if we can, why would we not do it?
Fair point. And you just mentioned there, about new technologies coming up. Are they coming on fast enough? And is the energy industry adopting new technologies, fast enough, really?
So I think within the past couple of years, the industry is ready to receive newer approaches, newer processes. And it wasn't until up to this point that we now are looking at policy changes, and each country and each global corporation is looking at those and making those meaningful commitments. Are they coming fast enough? Probably not as fast as we would hope for. But these commitments are real. Everybody has good intentions. And I look at it while they're being transparent in their communications, and I said it in the panel yesterday, what's equally as important as transparency is accountability. And I think that plays a factor of when countries make these type of commitments, what is the accountability of meeting that commitment within the timeline that it's being set?
Yeah, I think that's going to become even more important. And I want to just go back a bit, talk on some specific technologies. I mean, you mentioned methane emissions. What else are you involved in? Are you doing anything around carbon capture?
Well, the methane emissions that we're focused on is directly considered carbon capture. And I think that is such an important movement. And the reason for it is that we always see flarings happening 24/7. And imagine as countries or at global level, the amount of natural resources that we're losing to the atmosphere, and you could recover that. And for the longest time, we've been focused on CO2. If you think about methane has 80 times more warming power in its first decade into the atmosphere than CO2 does. So we need additional investments into not just, when I use the term near zero, that we can eliminate. We have abilities and platform to eliminate all sorts of flaring. And we have had meetings with some companies that are at the forefront of it. Mm-hmm. And we've had discussions with companies that they're like, yes, when can we start? So we're at a good time.
That's good to hear. And obviously, we were speaking before and you said this is your first EGYPS.
Yes.
Which is always good to hear someone coming to EGYPS. But, what is the Egypt market or MENA? What are you looking to, expand or get involved in this area?
Well, we are at EGYPS because of the result of COP27, right? That was hosted in Egypt and the commitment that the country was making and within the region, right? And as an engineering consulting firm, we want to be forefront of it. And that brought us to EGYPS and having the discussions with the stakeholders and seeing where they're headed and how can PAXON be part of those movements. And we've had fantastic discussions.
Well, that's great to hear. And are you going to do anything around COP28, or which is going to be in another Middle East country in the UAE?
Yes, we actually had that discussion this morning, and PAXON will most likely be there. We will be discussing the next generation tools that are coming into the market and what that looks like, and also looking at renewables, where we are within different countries, within the industry, and what it means for the next decade. Because we're at an energy transition, right? You have short-term goals and you have long-term goals. And I think it's equally as important to have a focus on the next decade, while your mindset is for setting up the infrastructure for the next century.
Well, Nooshin, that's really great to hear that you're going to be getting involved maybe at COP28 in the UAE in Dubai. I just want to thank you so much for coming down to the Energy Connect studio.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Enjoy the conversation.
Thanks for having me.